This week, Harvard filed a groundbreaking lawsuit against Donald Trump. I'm going to walk through the scandals at Harvard that have led to this, and how this lawsuit is going to affect you. Watch this video all the way to the end, because I uncovered some things that you probably have never heard about Harvard. When Donald Trump took office, he immediately started targeting universities. Working with DOJ, they found enormous amounts of taxpayer dollars being spent on ridiculous studies. Here is Trump talking about what he is cutting at the joint address to Congress.
$8 million for making mice transgender. This is real.
This week, conservative commentator Charlie Kirk went on Bill Maher's podcast, and this topic came up.
And look, some of this research is awesome, and I got to agree with you. Some of it they should do a case-by-case basis, but a lot of it, though, is this woke stuff that would, like, take your breath away. I mean, research into transgender mice. I mean, it was just the U.S. taxpayer dollars should be funding that.
See, I called that out on my show. That was bullshit. It wasn't transgender. See, that worries me about you, Charlie. You seem to have swallowed that one whole, like a snake does a mouse, without looking into it. It was transgenic mice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was not, but it's hugely different. Transgender, that's just going along with what the mob thinks. It wasn't. He got it wrong, and no one was around to tell him that he got it wrong. He just went with it. Transgender. It wasn't transgender. It was transgenic. They were studying mice for health reasons, serious cancer-solving reasons. Nothing to do with transgender. So
I stand corrected on that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bill Maher, but you got this one wrong. Donald Trump's team released a press release about the transgender mice. It lists out 6 different studies with an explanation of each study that would make you sick. Let me tell you what is actually happening. They are taking these mice and injecting them with sex-changing drugs to determine how different medical conditions will affect transgender people. What Bill Maher is doing is playing with words. He is saying the study is technically transgenic, not transgender. I don't care what you call it. It is gross and it is wrong, and you should not torture animals like this with my taxpayer dollars. I'm explaining this because people don't understand what is going on. I'm going to show you pictures from a study at Harvard. They took male mice and injected them with estrogen. And then they took female mice and injected them with testosterone. And then they implanted cancer cells to see how the mice would react after receiving hormone treatments. I don't know what Bill Maher is talking about, because that sounds like transgender mice to me, and it is horrible. I really don't understand this opinion from him. Bill Maher is an honorary director of PETA and is a longtime supporter to animal charities. Why is he supporting this? Shouldn't he be against the torture of animals in these experiments? And I also have to call out Charlie Kirk. Why isn't he telling Bill Maher that he is wrong? Charlie Kirk needs to tell the Democrats to stop creating transgender mice. I have to wonder, is Charlie Kirk being seduced by the glitz and glamour of Hollywood? Breaking news this week from Laura Loomer, when she discovered that one of the studies of transgender mice that Donald Trump had promised to stop funding just got their funding extended. She posted this screenshot showing the original budget date and that the study had been extended for another year under President Trump until June 2026. If you look at the study description, it says it is for treatments and recommendations for dosage of therapeutic agents to treat and prevent asthma in cis and transgender women. Why are we extending this study? I don't want my tax dollars paying for this. What is Donald Trump doing? Did he just stop the new funding and then is extending their old funding? Why is the study extended? I don't have a problem calling Donald Trump out when he gets something wrong. He needs to stop torturing these poor mice. He said he was going to do it. Why hasn't it happened? Harvard has been screaming about their cutoff funding. One scientist from Harvard who studies sexual and gender inequity in medicine says, these cuts are going to have catastrophic effects. They're not only impacting the LGBTQ community, but also scientific integrity and the broader community as well. I don't know what you think, but I don't want any of my taxpayer dollars going to Harvard to study gender inequity in medicine. One of the concerning features of the transgender movement is a disturbing obsession with converting younger and younger children. Well, it turns out that Harvard Medical School offers a course about healthcare for LGBT infants. The course catalog lists a course called Caring for Patients with Diverse Sexual Orientations, Gender Identities, and Sex Development. They're not just going after your kids in grade school. Now, they're going after babies. The teacher of the course has said that conservatives are misrepresenting the class and spreading fake news. She explains that the section on babies only addresses babies born intersex, or the rare situation where babies can be born with genitals that are not typical. So she says they are not transgender babies. I think this is just like Bill Maher. These people are playing word games to try to deceive you. This one lesson on babies is clearly part of a larger course on transgender issues, and my tax dollars should not be paying for it. But it gets worse. There's another Harvard course called Gender in Byzantium. The course explores the entire spectrum of binary and non-binary conceptualizations, representations, and performances of gender in Byzantium, otherwise known as the Middle Ages. For instance, the class is supposed to talk about eunuchs, explaining how they could have been a third gender. This is outrageous. Do you understand what a eunuch was? This was a time when they bought and sold slaves. A eunuch was when you bought a male slave, you took a knife, and you cut off their balls so they would not sleep with your women. No slaves were asking to become a eunuch. This was a horrible, violent atrocity, and Harvard is talking about it like it's another gender. My tax dollars should not be paying for this. I'm not the only person getting fed up with Harvard. Here is billionaire Ken Griffin explaining why he is no longer giving any donations to Harvard.
The real question is will America's, and I'm going to choose a word here carefully, America's elite university get back to their roots of educating American children, young adults, to be the future leaders of our country? Or are they going to maintain being lost in the wilderness of microaggressions, a DEI agenda that seems to have no real end game, and just being lost in the wilderness? Like, which way are we going to pick? Are we going to educate the future members of the House and the Senate and the leaders of IBM? Or are we going to educate a group of young men and women who are just caught up in a rhetoric of oppressor and oppressee, and this is not fair, and frankly, just like whiny snowflakes? Like, where are we going with education in elite schools in America? And that's a really big issue.
He calls Harvard graduates whiny snowflakes.
Are you still supporting Harvard financially?
No.
Just so you understand what a big deal this is, last year, Ken Griffin gave Harvard $300 million. Going forward, he's giving them nothing. If the billionaires can decide to stop giving Harvard money, I think the taxpayers should be able to stop giving them money too. To understand what is going on here, you need to look at Harvard's financial statements. In FY24, Harvard had revenue of $6.47 billion and expenses of $6.43 billion. They function as a basic nonprofit where their revenue covers their expenses. But their revenue breakdown is interesting. $1.3 billion from student income, $1 billion from sponsored support, like the government, $500 million in gifts, $2.7 billion from investment income from their endowment, and $900 million in other revenue. Do you see what is strange about this? Most of Harvard's revenue comes from investment income. In fact, it is double what they make from the students. They have an endowment of $53.2 billion. The interest from that money every year is what is funding the university.
Take Harvard. So you say the research money. First of all, they take 10 to 15% of that in overhead. Why does Harvard, with a $50 billion endowment, need $2 billion in research money?
Just ask Harvard the same question.
That's a hedge fund with a college attached.
Right.
That's not a university.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's something completely different. Stanford, $40 billion endowment. Yale, $35 billion endowment.
A normal business has to sell a product that people are willing to pay enough money for that it covers your expenses and hopefully generates a profit. But Harvard's product, education, can be so lousy because they don't care if they make any money from it. They're essentially a hedge fund with a few classes. They're going to get investment income either way. That's why their education is so crazy. They're just doing whatever they want. Well, my tax dollars should not have to pay for their lousy product.
I think as a political matter, if you went out and argued that to the American people right now and said, well, we're just not going to make it as a country unless we give $9 billion to Harvard that's sitting on $53 billion, you'd get your ass kicked, I imagine, in a political campaign. Now, don't misunderstand. I wish Harvard would actually work something out here. I do agree that these universities are important. They do important work. But I don't agree that we need to continue to fund people who won't listen to us when we say, you have problems. I would argue that it's a national security problem that these Ivy League colleges are turning out people who fundamentally hate Western civilization.
Yes, I agree with that guy. But Harvard doesn't care. The scandals continue when a Harvard foreign student was recently arrested and is in the process of being deported.
A Russian scientist working at Harvard Medical School is being detained by ICE as well. We're talking about Ksenia Petrova. She was coming back from a 2-week vacation in France when she was detained at Logan Airport in mid-February. Now, she has spent the last 6 weeks in detention. She now faces possible deportation. According to the Globe, she was carrying undeclared frog embryos that she was trying to bring back to her lab. A Harvard spokesperson says university officials are monitoring the situation.
So she's been in jail since February 16th. Democrats have been screaming that this is more unjustified attacks against Harvard students. The Department of Homeland Security responded to all the backlash by posting this tweet explaining that Petrova was arrested at the airport for trying to smuggle in biological samples. She also had messages on her phone talking about how she was going to intentionally break the law. This is not even about immigration policy. If you come into this country and break the law, you are going to get deported. We don't know a lot about these biological samples, but I am guessing there was some reason she was sneaking them in. Were they illegal stem cells? Were they genetically modified in some way? Could they be a biological weapon? If they weren't dangerous, why couldn't she buy them in the US? Why was she sneaking them in? This shows how Harvard has a problem with foreign students. Is Harvard bringing in foreign immigrants just as a cover for these people to create problems in America? This week, Kristi Noem released this press release demanding that Harvard provide the records on their foreign student visa holders' illegal and violent activities by April 30th, or they're going to lose the privilege of enrolling foreign students. I agree with this.
Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest.
There have been violent scenes at universities across America as students clash and riot police are called in. What you're seeing right now are pictures just into the newsroom of angry scenes between pro-Palestine and pro-Israeli protesters outside the University of California. It's the latest in a series of clashes where thousands of students continue to protest against Israel's war in Gaza. Nearly 1,000 people have been arrested, with dozens of suspensions and cancelled classes.
If these young people are coming over here and participating in riots and violent protests, they are not really students. That means they lied on their visa applications, and we need to kick them out. With all the problems Harvard is creating, Trump is considering pulling Harvard's tax-free status as a nonprofit. Here's a post where Trump says, "Perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest." Not all universities are tax-exempt. For instance, University of Phoenix operates as a for-profit business. But Harvard enjoys a 501c3 status. They don't have to pay taxes, but that means they're supposed to serve the public good. They need to provide educational opportunities for everyone. They can't be involved in political activities. It seems to me like Harvard is violating the tax law. Trump is right. How are they providing education for everyone if they're pushing political ideology? Now, you might think that taking away Harvard's tax-exempt status is extreme. But the IRS has done it before. In the 1980s, there was a college the IRS determined had used a racially discriminatory admissions policy. Guess what? You can't be racist and get tax-exempt status. Well, guess what Harvard is doing? In 2023, Harvard took a case to the Supreme Court. Harvard had been using race as a factor in admission decisions. The Supreme Court determined that was illegal. Harvard responded to the Supreme Court decision by saying this: "The court also ruled that colleges and universities may consider in admissions decisions an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise. We will certainly comply with the court's decision." It sounds like they found a loophole. If an applicant writes about their race in an essay, they can consider it. It sounds to me like Harvard is being racist. Why are they deciding who can go to their college based on the color of their skin? I wonder how many white men Harvard has discriminated against. I'm betting that it is a lot. Now, we don't exactly know how Harvard does their admissions, since they have refused the Trump administration transparency into their admissions process. But if they are being racist, that is a reason the IRS can remove their tax-exempt status. The reason why Harvard's tax status is so frustrating is because they are extremely rich. Just as a practical matter, they have the endowment of $53 billion. They could completely cover their expenses for 8 years. Why are we giving them a tax break? I'm sitting over here paying taxes, barely able to afford eggs, and Harvard pays no taxes when they have $53 billion? This is not fair. I don't understand how their admissions can be unfair. They push a political agenda, they have all this money, and they don't have to pay any taxes. Let me use myself as an example. I went to undergrad at USC in Los Angeles. Now, that was a long time ago now. But what happens is that in your first year, everyone is required to take a writing class where you write a bunch of papers. They brought all of us into a class and told us our first assignment was to write a paper on abortion. As a conservative, I wrote a paper with a pro-life opinion. I promptly received an F. I went to the professor to ask why. Was my grammar bad? Did I have spelling errors? None of that was a problem. The professor told me my opinion was wrong. I was not allowed to have that opinion, and that is why I received an F. Well, I learned really quickly that if I wanted to pass my classes, I would have to keep my conservative opinions to myself. And that was at USC, which is actually a more conservative school. I can only imagine what it's like for students at Harvard. A Harvard professor would have probably torn my head off. My point is that a university should not receive tax-exempt status if the students are not allowed to have different political opinions. Tax-exempt status means that everyone should have access to education, not just Democrats. We know that Harvard has a problem with this. There's a group called the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or FIRE, and they rank universities every year on the expression of free speech on campus. Out of all the universities, do you know where Harvard ranks in terms of free speech? For the last 2 years, they have been dead last. The survey says, since 2020, we documented 20 speech controversies at Harvard that resulted in a deplatforming, a scholar sanction, a student sanction, or an attempted disruption of an event. If you want to pass your classes, you're not allowed to say the wrong thing. But while there's plenty of speech that Harvard is censoring, they're allowing some really horrible speech in the form of anti-Semitism. We all saw when the former president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, testified in front of Congress and said that it was okay to call for the genocide of Jews.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it is
values
against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech not cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When
you testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the code of conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I both know that's not the case.
Why won't she say that it's against the code of conduct to call for genocide? This is unbelievable. And she tries to get around by claiming that she is for free speech. Baloney. I already explained that Harvard is dead last when it comes to free speech. She doesn't care about free speech. She only cares about the speech she does not like. If you are calling for genocide, something is wrong with you, and that needs to be called out. Now, you may have heard that Claudine Gay was fired because of these comments, but I'm betting you didn't hear the whole story. Here's what really happened. She was not really fired. She was demoted back to being a professor. For the last year, she's been teaching the students. Not only that, she kept her president's salary of $900,000 per year. Honestly, I don't know why any parent would send their children to this university and let them be taught by Claudine Gay. Let me break down what is really going on here. Universities receive a lot of foreign money in the form of gifts and grants. To use one example, China gave $2.8 billion to American colleges and universities to set up cultural learning and language institutes. Well, it turns out that these were really alleged outposts for Chinese espionage. In fact, the head of propaganda for the Chinese Communist Party said that the institutes were an important part of China's overseas propaganda setup. In 2017, the National Association of Scholars issued a report recommending that all universities close their Confucius institutes. Well, it turns out that donations from another part of the world dwarf the amount of money that China gave. These Middle Eastern countries gave $10.3 billion over the last 40 years. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Kuwait. That is 1/4 of all the money sent from all the foreign countries combined. Do you think the Middle East is influencing the policy on these campuses? Let us talk about Harvard specifically. From 2017 to 2023, Harvard received $1.6 million in gifts from entities within the state of Palestine. Now, Harvard has not disclosed how this money was spent, but we do know that Harvard works with Birzeit University in Palestine. Days after the attack on Israel, Birzeit University's Union of Professors and Employees released this statement. 2023 will be recorded historically as the year that Palestinians stood boldly in the face of colonial fascism and screamed in defense of their homes, humanity, and lives. They are standing with the Hamas terrorists. Why is Harvard having anything to do with these people? Is it because of all the money Harvard is taking? Is that why they are allowing anti-Semitism on campus? More importantly, if these universities are working with terrorist organizations, why are we giving them tax-free status? Just this week, new pro-Palestine encampments have sprouted up at Yale University. Just like Harvard, Yale also has a large endowment of $41 billion. This is the protesters blocking a Jewish student from walking across campus. Just for context, this is the same thing that happened during 1938 when Nazi soldiers blocked Jewish students from entering university buildings in Germany. Here are more protesters at Yale throwing liquid on Jewish students as they exit a building after an event. The cops are standing around doing nothing to stop this. One of the things they shout is, "We will honor all our martyrs."
We will honor all our martyrs.
We will honor all our martyrs.
Fathers, fathers, sons and daughters.
Fathers, fathers, sons and daughters.
We will honor all our martyrs.
We will honor all our martyrs.
Fathers, fathers, sons and daughters.
Fathers, fathers, sons and daughters.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Another thing they shout is globalize the Intifada. Just so you understand, the Intifada refers to two escalations in conflict in Israel, once in the 80s and then again in the early 2000s. Close to 1,000 Israelis were killed or injured in horrible Palestine terror attacks. These terror attacks include suicide bombers wearing a vest of explosives, sitting down in a crowded bus, and killing as many innocent civilians as possible. So when they are chanting, "Globalize the Intifada," they're talking about bringing bus bombings to the United States. I'm sorry, but we should not be giving these universities a dime of taxpayer dollars. So let's get to the lawsuit. This week, Harvard filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. They're asking the court to force Trump to give them the federal funds he has frozen and to stop Trump from taking away any more federal funds. You almost have to laugh at this. After all the scandals I just explained to you, they don't understand why their funds are being frozen? They're demanding that they be given your tax dollars so that they can make more transgender mice. What is even more absurd about this lawsuit is the basis of their claim is that Donald Trump is violating their freedom of speech. There's a total of 6 claims against Trump, but the other 5 are more procedural, like claiming that Trump is being arbitrary and capricious. But the basic argument in the lawsuit is about freedom of speech. That's it. That's the lawsuit. Harvard, who is dead last in freedom of speech on campus, is complaining that they don't have freedom of speech. In the lawsuit, they say, the government wielded the threat of withholding federal funds in an attempt to coerce Harvard to conform with the government's preferred mix of viewpoints and ideologies. These people are delusional. Donald Trump is not stopping their speech at all. They can become a private company and do whatever they want. But if you take taxpayer dollars, you have to be a university for everyone. That's the deal you make when you take taxpayer dollars. That's the deal you make when you're a tax-exempt organization. But if you want to engage in political activities, if you want to take money from terrorist organizations, you need to become a private company. The federal government gets to decide who they give money to. That's their job. You can't demand the federal government give you money. And if you're running around like a bunch of knuckleheads, like Harvard is, you don't get any money. What happens with this lawsuit will determine the future of America. If a judge rules that Harvard has the power to tell the president how he has to run the country, America is over. All the craziness that we've been experiencing has come from places like Harvard, where you have out-of-touch elites in ivory towers telling the rest of us how to live our lives. I, for one, have had enough of it. I'm sick and tired of paying my taxes and having my money go to Harvard for them to make transgender mice. But I've not even told you everything. The scandals get even more sinister than this. Were you aware that the library at Harvard was keeping a book bound with human skin? Apparently, there was a creepy French person in the mid-1880s. There was a dead female patient in the hospital where he worked. He took the skin off this dead girl, desecrating the body, and used it as a binding on this book that he owned. He wrote a really creepy explanation saying, "A book about the human soul deserved to have a human covering." What makes this so horrible is that scientists confirmed over 10 years ago that this was, in fact, human skin. Harvard knew about this book for 10 years and kept it on the library shelf. They didn't have a problem with this? It doesn't bother them that they're keeping human remains on a library shelf where any unsuspecting person could pick it up. What is even worse is that Harvard posted 2 blog posts about the book in gleefully dark terms. They were joking about it. This scandal is still not over. Harvard eventually removed the binding off the book, but according to Harvard's website, the girl's skin is still sitting in a room somewhere at Harvard. This happened over a year ago. What are they waiting for? Why is no one burying the skin and allowing this poor girl to have her remains be put to rest? I don't understand why this is not illegal. Now, it would be one thing if this was an isolated incident, but it's not. A man was discovered selling human remains from Harvard Medical School. FBI agents raided his home and found 40 human skulls.
And first at 4, we start with a WDRB news alert on dozens of skulls and other human remains found in a Mount Washington home.
WDRB's Christy Batista learned this goes far beyond Mount Washington. Christy?
It sure does, guys, but approximately 40 human skulls, spinal cords, femurs, and hip bones found in a home behind Bullitt County East High School. When the FBI got there for a search warrant, the complaint says they asked James Knott if there was anyone else home, and he responded, quote, "Only my dead friends." The criminal complaint says they were decorated around the furniture. One skull had a headscarf around it, and one was on the mattress where Knott slept. The FBI has been investigating since last June, where they found organs and skin in a Pennsylvania home. Jeremy Pauley was arrested and told officers there was a network of people who were stealing human remains and then selling them on the internet, including the morgue manager for the Harvard Medical School Anatomical Gift Program. The FBI searched Pauley's Facebook and found he was messaging Knott. The FBI says Knott was using a serial killer's alias William Burke. Knott allegedly also posted human remains for sale on his public Facebook account as recently as last month.
Am I the only person who is grossed out by this? What is going on at Harvard? The morgue manager for the Harvard Medical School was in a network of people selling human remains. I'm sorry, but Harvard should not get a dime of federal funds. Do you understand how horrible this is? People will sign up for when they die to donate their bodies to science. These people donated their bodies because they thought it was going to be used for science experiments. Instead, they're being sold off on the black market. And you have to wonder, what kind of people are buying dead bodies? Is this something they're using for satanic rituals? In my opinion, it sounds like spiritual warfare is going on. Now, I know some of you are going to roll your eyes and say, Zach, why are you bringing up religion? Just listen to this. A California school board meeting happened this week to talk about whether to allow biological men to play in women's sports. Multiple Democrat protesters ended their remarks by saying, "Hail Satan."
Y'all are a bunch of transphobic pieces of shit. I hope y'all all burn in hell. Ah, hail Satan, bitches!
We won't be burning in hell, ma'am.
Y'all are really afraid of authenticity and people being their own true selves. You're afraid of love. You're afraid of solidarity. Y'all are crazy for that.
And therefore, I have every right to express myself when I say this. Black Lives Matter, Queer Lives Matter, Save the Children, Free the Congo, Free Palestine, Trans Lives Matter, and Hail Satan.
Did you hear that? Black Lives Matter, Queer Lives Matter, Save the Children, Free the Congo, Free Palestine, Trans Lives Matter, and Hail Satan. These are the same type of people at Harvard. They have books bound with human skin. They're selling body parts. It's time to shut down their funding. Harvard can go off and do whatever they want, but they don't have to do it with my taxpayer dollars. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think that Harvard deserves to get their funding back? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. If you find these videos helpful, consider signing up for a monthly membership on my website, wolvesandfinance.com. For $6 a month, your support helps me to keep making these videos. Thank you to everyone who has signed up. I'm Zach from Wolves and Finance. Thank you for watching.